Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Men at Arms by Terry Pratchett, Part 6. Captain Vime's boots told him he was in Scoon Avenue. His feet were doing the walking of their own volition. His mind was somewhere else. In fact, some of it was dissolving gently in Jimkin Bear Hugger's finest nectar. If only they hadn't been so damn polite. There were a number of things he'd seen in his life which he'd always try, without success, to forget. Up until now, he would have put at the top of the list, looking at the tonsils of a giant dragon as it drew the breath intended to turn him into a small pile of impure charcoal. He still woke up sweating at the memory of the little pilot light. But he dreaded now that it was going to be replaced by the recollection of all those impassive dwarf faces watching him politely, and the feeling that his words were dropping into a deep pit. After all, what could he say? Sorry he's dead, and that's official. We're putting our worst men on the case. The late Bjorn Hammerhawk's house had been full of dwarves. Silent, owlish, polite dwarves. The news had got around. He wasn't telling anyone anything they didn't know. Many of them were holding weapons. Mr. Strong in the Arm was there. Captain Vimes had talked to him before about his speeches on the subject of the need for grinding all trolls in little bits and using them to make roads. But the dwarf wasn't saying anything now. He was just looking smug. There was an air of quiet, polite menace that said, "We'll listen to you. Then we'll do what we decide to do." He hadn't even been sure which one was Mrs. Ankh-Morpork. They all looked alike to him. When she was introduced, helmeted, bearded, he'd got polite, non-committal answers. No shed locked his workshop. And seemed to have mislaid the key. Thank you. No, she'd locked his workshop and seemed to have mislaid the key. Thank you. He tried to indicate as subtly as possible that a wholesale march on Quarry Lane would be frowned upon by the guard, probably from a vantage point at a safe distance, but hadn't the face to spell it out. He couldn't say, "Don't take matters into your own hands, for the guard are mightily in pursuit of the wrongdoer," because he didn't have a clue where to start. "Had your husband any enemies?" "Yes, someone put a huge great hole in him, but apart from that, did he have any enemies?" So he'd extracted himself with as much dignity as possible, which wasn't very much. And after a battle with himself which he'd lost, he'd picked up half a bottle of Bear Hugger's old persnickety and wandered into the night. Carrot and Angua reached the end of Gleam Street. "Where are you staying?" said Carrot. "Just down there," she pointed. "Elm Street? Not Mrs. Cake's?" "Yes, why not? I just wanted a clean place, reasonably priced. What's wrong with that?" "Well, I've nothing against Mrs. Cake. A lovely woman, one of the best. Well, you must have noticed." "Noticed what?" "Well, She's not very, choosy. Sorry, I'm still not with you. You must have seen some of the other guests. I mean, doesn't Reg Shoe still have lodgings there? Oh, said Angua. You mean the zombie? And there's a banshee in the attic. Mr. Ixolite. Yes. And there's old Mrs. Drull. The ghoul. But she's retired. She does children's party catering now. I mean, doesn't it strike you the place is a bit odd? But the rates are reasonable and the beds are clean. I should think anyone ever sleeps in them. All right. I had to take what I could get. Sorry. I know how it is. I was like that myself when I first arrived here. But my advice is to move out as soon as it's polite and find somewhere, well, more suitable for a young lady, if you know what I mean. Not really. Mr. Shoe even tried to help me upstairs with my stuff. Mind you, I had to help him upstairs with his arms afterwards. Bits fall off him all the time. Poor soul. But they're not really our kind of people, said Carrot wretchedly. Don't get me wrong. I mean, dwarves. Some of my best friends are dwarves. My parents are dwarves. Trolls, no problem at all with trolls. Salt of the earth, literally. Wonderful chaps under all that crust, but undead. I just wish they'd go back to where they came from. That's all. Most of them came from around here. I just don't like him. Sorry. I've got to go, said Angua coldly. She paused at the dark entrance of an alley. Right, said Carrot. When shall I see you again? Tomorrow. We're in the same job, yes? But maybe when we're off duty, we could take a got to go. Angua turned and ran. The moon's halo was already visible under the rooftops of Unseen University. Okay, well, right, tomorrow then, Carrot called after her. Angua could feel the world spinning as she stumbled through the shadows. She shouldn't have left it so long. She stumbled out into a cross street with a few people in it and managed to make it into an alley mouth, pawing at her clothes. She was seen by Bundo Prung, recently expelled from the Thieves Guild for unnecessary enthusiasm and conduct unbecoming in Mugger and a desperate man. An isolated woman in a dark alley was just about what he felt he could manage. He glanced around and followed her in. Silence followed for about 5 seconds. Then Bundo emerged very fast and didn't stop running until he reached the docks, where a boat was leaving on the tide. He ran up the gangplank just before it was pulled up and became a seaman, and died 3 years later when an armadillo fell on his head in a far-off country, and in all that time never said what he'd seen. But he did scream a bit whenever he saw a dog. Angua emerged a few seconds later and trotted away. Lady Sybil Ramkin opened the door and sniffed the night air. Samuel Vimes, you're drunk! Not yet, but I hope to be, said Vimes in cheerful tones. You haven't changed out of your uniform. Vimes looked down and then up again. That's right, he said brightly. The guest will be here any minute. Go on up to your room. There's a tub drawn and Wilkins has laid out a suit for you. Get along with you. Jolly good. Vimes bathed in lukewarm water and a rosy, alcoholic glow. Then he dried himself off as best he could and looked at the suit on the bed. It had been made for him by the finest tailor in the city. Sybil Ramkin had a generous heart. She was a woman, out for all she could give. The suit was blue and deep purple, with lace on the wrists and at the throat. It was the height of fashion, he had been told. Lady Sybil Ramkin wanted him to go up in the world. She'd never actually said it, but he knew she felt he was far too good to be a copper. He stared at it in muzzy incomprehension. He'd never really worn a suit before. When he was a kid, there'd been whatever rags could be tied on, and later on there'd been the leather knee, breeches, and chainmail of the watch. Comfortable, practical clothes. There was a hat with the suit. It had pearls on it. Vimes had never worn any headgear before that hadn't been hammered out of one piece of metal. The shoes were long and pointy. He'd always worn sandals in the summer and the traditional cheap boots in the winter. Captain Vimes could just about manage to be an officer. He wasn't at all sure how to become a gentleman. Putting on the suit would seem to be part of it. Guests were arriving. He could hear the crunch of carriage wheels on the driveway and the flip-flop of the sedan chair carriers. He glanced out of the window. Scoon Avenue was higher than most of Morpork and offered unrivaled views of the city, if that was your idea of a good time. The patrician's palace was a darker shape in the dusk, with one lighted window high up. It was the center of a well-lit area which got darker and darker as the view widened and began to take in those parts of the city where you didn't light a candle because that was wasting good food. There was red torchlight around Quarry Lane. Well, Troll's New Year, understandable, and a faint glow over the high-energy magic building at Unseen University. Vimes would arrest all wizards on suspicion of being too bloody clever by half. But more lights than you'd expect to see around Cable and Sheer, the part of the city that people like Captain Quirk referred to as Tiny Town. "Samuel!" Vimes adjusted his cravat as best he could. He'd faced trolls and dwarves and dragons, but now he was having to meet an entirely new species. The rich. It was always hard to remember, afterwards, how the world looked when she was dans une certaine condition, as her mother had delicately called it. For example, she remembered seeing smells, the actual streets and buildings. They were there, of course, but only as a drab monochrome background against which the sounds and, yes, the smells seared like brilliant lines of colored fire and clouds of colored smoke. That was the point. That was where it all broke down. There were no proper words afterwards for what she heard and smelled. If you could see an eighth distinct color just for a while and then describe it back in the seven-colored world, it'd have to be something like a sort of greenish purple. Experience did not cross over well between species. Sometimes, although not very often, Angua thought she was very lucky to get to see both worlds. And there was always 20 minutes after a change when all the senses were heightened, so that the world glowed in every sensory spectrum like a rainbow. It was nearly worth it just for that. There were varieties of werewolf. Some people merely had to shave every hour and wear a hat to cover the ears. They could pass for nearly normal. But she could recognize them nevertheless. Werewolves could spot another werewolf across a crowded street. There was something about the eyes. And, of course, if you had time, there were all sorts of other clues. Werewolves tended to live alone and take jobs that didn't bring them into contact with animals. They wore scent or aftershave a lot and tended to be very fastidious about their food, and kept diaries with the phases of the moon carefully marked in red ink. It was no life being a werewolf in the country. A stupid chicken went missing, and you were a number one suspect. Everyone said it was better in the city. It was certainly overpowering. Angua could see several hours of Elm Street all in one go. The mugger's fear was a fading orange line. Carrot's trail was an expanding pale green cloud with an edge that suggested he was slightly worried. There were additional tones of old leather and armor polish. Other trails, faint or powerful, crisscrossed the street. There was one that smelled like an old privy carpet. "You bitch!" said a voice behind her. She turned her head. Gaspard looked no better through canine vision, except that he was at the center of a cloud of mixed odors. "Oh, it's you." "'S right," said Gaspard, feverishly scratching himself. He gave her a hopeful look. "Just asking, you understand? Just getting it over with right now for the look of the thing, for what's name's sake, as it might be. But I suppose there's no chance of me sniffing. None. Just asking. No offense meant." Angua wrinkled her muzzle. "How come you smell so bad? I mean, you smelled bad enough when I was a human, but now..." Gaspard looked proud. "Good, innit?" he said. "It didn't just happen. I had to work at it. If you was a true dog, this would be like really great aftershave. By the way, you want to get a collar, miss? No one bothers you if you've got a collar." "Thanks." Gaspard seemed to have something on his mind. You don't rip hearts out, do you?" "Not unless I want to," said Angua. Right, said Gaspard hurriedly. "Where are you going?" He broke into a waddling, bow-legged trot to keep up with her. "To have a sniff around Hammerhawk's place. I didn't ask you to come." "Got nothing else to do," said Gaspard. "The House of Ribs don't put its rubbish out till midnight." "Haven't you got a home to go to?" said Angua, as they trotted under a fish and chip store. "Home? Me? Home? Yeah, of course. No problemo. Laughing kids, big kitchen, 3 meals a day, humorous cat next door to chase, own blanket and spot by the fire. He's an old softy, but we love him, etc. No problem there. I just like to get out a bit," said Gaspard. "Only I see you haven't got a collar." "It fell off." "Right. It was the weight of all them rhinestones." "I expect it was." "They let me do pretty much as I like," said Gaspard. "I can see that." "Sometimes I don't go home for days at a time." "Right. Weeks sometimes." "Sure. But they're always so glad to see me when I do," said Gaspard. "I thought you said you slept up at the university," said Angua, as they dodged a cart in Rhyme Street. For a moment Gaspard smelled uncertain, but he recovered magnificently. "Yeah, right," he said. "Well, you know how it is. Families, all them kids picking you up, giving you biscuits and similar, people patting you the whole time, gets on your nerves. So I sleeps up there quite often." "Right. More often than not, point of fact." "Really?" Gaspard whimpered a little. "You want to be careful, you know. A young bitch like you can meet real trouble in this dog city." They had reached the wooden jetty behind Hammerhawk's workshop. "How'd you..." Angua paused. There was a mixture of smells here, but the overpowering one was as sharp as a saw. "Fireworks? And fear," said Gaspard. "Lots of fear." He sniffed the planks. "Human fear, not dwarf. You can tell if it's dwarfs. It's the rat diet, see? Phew! Must have been real bad to stay this strong." "I smell one male human, one dwarf," said Angua. "Yeah, one dead dwarf." Gaspard stuck his battered nose along the line of the door and snuffled noisily. "There's other stuff," he said, "but it's a bugger. What with the river so close and everything, there's oil and grease and all sorts. Hey, where are you going?" Gaspard trotted after her as Angua headed back to Rhyme Street, nose close to the ground. "Following the trail." "What for? He won't thank you, you know." "Who won't?" "Your young man?" Angua stopped so suddenly that Gaspard ran into her. "You mean Corporal Carrot?" "He's not my young man." "Yeah? I'm a dog, right? It's all in the nose, right? Smell can't lie. Pheromones. It's the old sexual alchemy stuff. I've only known him a couple of nights." "Aha!" "What do you mean, aha?" Nothing wrong with it anyway." "There isn't any it to be wrong." Right, not that it would be," said Gaspard, adding hurriedly, "even if there was. Everyone likes Corporal Carrot." "They do, don't they?" said Angua, her hackles settling down. "He's very likable." "Even Big Fido only bit his hand when Carrot tried to pat him." "Who's Big Fido?" "Chief Barker of the Dog Guild." "Dogs have got a guild? Dogs? Pull one of the other ones. It's got the bells on." "No, straight up. Scavenging rights, sunbathing spots, nighttime barking duty, breeding rights, howling rotors, the whole bone of rubber." "Dog guild," snarled Angua sarcastically. "Oh, yes. Chase a rat up a pipe in the wrong street and call me a liar. It's a good job for you I'm around, else you could get into big trouble. There's big trouble for a dog in this town who ain't a guild member. It's lucky for you," said Gaspard, "that you met me." "I suppose you're a big dog in the guild, yes?" "Ain't a member," said Gaspard smugly. "How come you survive then?" "I can think on my paws, me. Anyway, Big Fido leaves me alone. I got the power." "What power?" "Never you mind. Big Fido, he's a friend of mine." Biting a man's arm for patting you doesn't sound very friendly. "Yeah? Last man who tried to pat Big Fido, they only ever found his belt buckle." "Yes? And that was in a tree." "Where are we?" "Not even a tree near here." "What?" Gaspard sniffed the air. His nose could read the city in a way of reminiscent of Captain Vimes's educated souls. "Junction of Scoon Avenue and Prout's," he said. "Trail's dying out. It's mixed up with too much other stuff." Angua sniffed around for a while. Someone had come up here, but too many people had crossed the trail. The sharp smell was still there, but only as a suggestion in the welter of conflicting scents. She was aware of an overwhelming smell of approaching soap. She'd noticed it before, but only as a woman and only as a faint whiff. As a quadruped, it seemed to fill the world. Corporal Carrot was walking up the road, looking thoughtful. He wasn't looking where he was going, however, but he didn't need to. People stood aside for Corporal Carrot. It was the first time she'd seen him through those eyes. Good grief, how did people not notice? He walked through the city like a tiger through tall grass, or a hubland bear across the snow, wearing the landscape like a skin. Gaspard glanced sideways. Angua was sitting on her haunches, staring. "Your tongue's hanging out," he said. "What? So what? That's natural. I'm panting." "Har, har." Carrot noticed them and stopped. "Why, it's the little mongrel dog," he said. "Woof, woof," said Gaspard, his traitor tail wagging. "I see you've got a lady friend, anyway," said Carrot, patting him on the head and then absent-mindedly wiping his hand on his tunic. "And my word, what a splendid bitch," he said. "A ram-top wolfhound, if I'm any judge." He stroked Angua in a vaguely friendly way. "Oh well," he said, "this isn't getting any work done, is it?" "Wolf wine, give the doggy a biscuit," said Gaspard. Carrot stood up and patted his pockets. "I think I've got a piece of biscuit here. Well, I could believe you understand every word I say." Gaspard begged and caught the biscuit easily. "Woof woof, fawn fawn," he said. Carrot gave Gaspard the slightly puzzled look that people always give him when he said woof instead of barking, nodded at Angua, and carried on towards Scoon Avenue and Lady Ramkin's house. "There," said Gaspard, crunching the stale biscuit noisily. "Goes a very nice boy." "Simple, but nice." "Yes, he is simple, isn't he?" said Angua. "That's what I first noticed about him. He's simple, and everything else here is complicated." "He was making sheep's eye at you earlier," said Gaspard. "Not that I've got anything against sheep eyes, mind you, if they're fresh." "You're disgusting." "Yeah, but at least I stay the same shape all month. No offense meant. You're asking for a bite." "Oh, yeah," moaned Gaspard. "Yeah, you'll bite me. Arrgh! Oh, yes, that'll really worry me, that will. I mean, I think about it. I've got so many dog diseases. I'm only alive because the little buggers are too busy fighting among themselves. I mean, I've even got licky end, and you only get that if you're a pregnant sheep. Go on, bite me. Change my life. Every time there's a full moon, suddenly I grow hair and yellow teeth and have to go around on all fours. Yes, I can see that making a big difference to my ongoing situation. Actually," he said, "I'm definitely on a losing streak in the hair department, so maybe, not the whole bite, maybe just a nibble." "Shut up. At least you've got a lady friend," Carrot had said, as if there was something on his mind. "A quick lick, even." "Shut up." "This unrest is all Veterinary's fault," said the Duke of Eorl. "The man has no style. So now, of course, we have a city where grocers have as much influence as barons. He even let the plumbers form a guild. That's against nature, in my humble opinion." "It wouldn't be so bad if he set some kind of social example," said Lady Omnius. "Or even governed," said Lady Selachi. "People seem to be able to get away with anything." "I admit that the old kings were not necessarily our kind of people. Towards the end," said the Duke of Eorl. "But at least they stood for something, in my humble opinion. We had a decent city in those days. People were more respectful and knew their place. People put in a decent day's work. They didn't laze around all the time. And we certainly didn't open the gates to whatever riffraff was capable of walking through. And of course, we also had law. Isn't that so, Captain? Captain Samuel Vimes stared glassily at a point somewhere to the left and just above the speaker's left ear. Cigar smoke hung almost motionless in the air. Vimes was dimly aware that he'd spent several hours eating too much food in the company of people he didn't like. He longed for the smell of damp streets and the feel of the cobbles under his cardboard soles. A tray of post-prandial drinks was orbiting the table.
Postprandial.
Postprandial, an adjective during or relating to the period after dinner or lunch. Postprandial. A tray of postprandial drinks was orbiting the table, but Vimes hadn't touched it because it upset Sybil, and she tried not to show it, and that upset him even more. The bear huggers had worn off. He hated being sober. It meant he started to think. One of the thoughts jesting for space was that there was no such thing as a humble opinion. He hadn't had much experience with the rich and powerful. Coppers didn't, as a rule. It wasn't that they were less prone to commit crimes. It was just that the crimes they committed tended to be so far above the normal level of criminality that they were beyond the reach of men with bad boots and rusting mail. Owning 100 slum properties wasn't a crime, although living in one was almost. Being an assassin, the guild never actually said so, but an important qualification was being the son or daughter of a gentleman wasn't a crime. If you had enough money, you could hardly commit crimes at all. You just perpetrated amusing little peccadillos. Peccadillos.
Peccadillos.
Peccadillo, a small, relatively unimportant offense or sin. Misdemeanor. Peccadillo. And now, everywhere you look, it's uppity dwarves and trolls and rude people, said Lady Salici. There's more dwarves in Ankh-Morpork now than there are in any of their own cities, or whatever they call their holes. What do you think, Captain? Said the Duke of Eorl. Captain Vimes picked up a grape and started turning it over and over in his fingers. The current ethnic problem? Are we having one? Well, yes. Look at Quarry Lane. There's fighting there every night. And they have absolutely no concept of religion. Vimes examined the grape minutely. What he wanted to say was, of course they fight. They're trolls. Of course they bash one another with clubs. Trollish is basically body language, and well, they like to shout. In fact, the only one who ever gives anyone any real trouble is that bastard Chrysoprace. And that's only because he apes humans and is a quick learner. As for religion, troll gods were hitting one another with clubs 10,000 years before we'd even stopped trying to eat rocks. But the memory of the dead dwarf stirred something perverse in his soul. He put the grape back on his plate. Definitely, he said. In my view, the godless bastards should be rounded up and marched out of the city as spear point. There was a moment's silence. It's no more than they deserve, Vimes added. Exactly. They're barely more than animals, said Lady Omnius. Vimes suspected her first name was Sarah. Have you noticed how massive their heads are? said Vimes. "That's really just rock. Very small brains." "And morally, of course," said Lord Eorl. There was a murmur of vague agreement. Vimes reached for his glass. "Wilkins, I don't think Captain Vimes wants any wine," said Lady Ramkin. "Wrong," said Vimes cheerfully. "And while we're on the subject, how about the dwarves?" "I don't know if anyone's noticed," said Lord Eorl, "but you certainly don't see as many dogs about as you used to." Vimes stared. It was true about the dogs. There didn't seem to be quite so many mooching around these days. That was a fact. But he'd visited a few dwarf bars with Carrot, and knew that dwarves would indeed eat dog, but only if they couldn't get rat. And 10,000 dwarves eating continuously with knife, fork, and shovel wouldn't make a dent in Ankh-Morpork's rat population. It was a major feature in dwarfish letters back home. "Come on, everyone, and bring the ketchup." "Notice how small their heads are," he managed. "Very limited capacity, surely. Fact of measurement." "And you never see their women," said Lady Sarah Omnius. "I find that very suspicious. You know what they say about dwarves," she added darkly. Vimes sighed. He was just about aware that you saw their women all the time, although they looked just like the male dwarves. Surely everyone knew that. Who knew anything about dwarves? "Cunning little devils, too," said Lady Selachi. "Sharp as needles." "You know," Vimes shook his head, "you know that's what's so damn annoying, isn't it? The way they can be so incapable of any rational thought and so bloody shrewd at the same time." Only Vimes saw the look Lady Ramkin flashed him. Lord Eorl stubbed out his cigar. "They just move in and take over and work away like ants all the time. Real people should be getting some sleep. It's not natural." Vimes's mind circled the comment and compared it to the earlier one about a decent day's work. "Well, one of them won't be working so hard," said Lady Omnius. "My maid said one of them was found in the river this morning. Probably some tribal war or something." "Ha! It's a start, anyway," said Lord Eorl. Eorl, laughing. "Oh, ha! It's a start, anyway," said Lord Eorl, laughing. "Not that anyone will notice one more or less." Vimes smiled brightly. There was a wine bottle near his hand, despite Wilkins's tactful best efforts to remove it. The neck looked invitingly grippable. He was aware of eyes on him. He looked across the table into the face of a man who was watching him intently, and whose last contribution to the conversation had been, "Could you be so kind as to pass me the seasonings, Captain?" There was nothing remarkable about the face, except for the gaze, which was absolutely calm and mildly amused. It was Dr. Cruce's. Vimes had the strong impression that his thoughts were being read. "Samuel!" Vimes's hand stopped halfway to the bottle. Willikins was standing next to her ladyship. "Apparently there's a young man at the door asking for you," said Lady Ramkin. "Corporal Carrot." "Gosh, this is exciting," said Lord Eorl. "Has he come to arrest us, do you think?" "Ha," said Vimes. Lord Eorl nudged his partner. "I expect that somewhere a crime is being committed," he said. "Yes," said Vimes. "Quite close, I think." Carrot was shown in, with his helmet under his arm at a respectful angle. He gazed at the select company, licked his lips nervously, and saluted. Everyone was looking at him. It was hard not to notice Carrot in a room. There were bigger people than him in the city. He didn't loom. He just seemed, without trying, to distort things around him. Everything became background to Corporal Carrot. "At ease, Corporal," said Vimes. "What's up? He added quickly, knowing Carrot's erratic approach to colourful language. "What is the reason for you being here at this time?" "Got something to show you, sir." Sir? I think it's from the Assass." "Well, just go and talk about it outside, shall we?" said Vimes. Dr. Crucis hadn't twitched a muscle. Lord Eorl sat back. "Well, I must say I'm impressed," he said. "I'd always thought you watchmen were a pretty ineffective lot, but I see you're pursuing your duty at all times, always on the alert for the criminal mind, eh?" "Oh, yes," said Vimes. "The criminal mind, yes." The cooler air of the ancestral hallway came as a blessing. He leaned against the wall and squinted at the card. "Gone?" "You know you said you saw something in the courtyard," Carrot began. "What's a gone?" "Maybe something wasn't in the Assassin's Museum, and they put this sign on it," said Carrot. "You know, like removed for cleaning. They do that in museums." "No, I shouldn't think that. What do you know about museums anyway?" "Oh, well, sir," said Carrot, "I sometimes visit them on my day off. The one in the university, of course. And Lord Veterinary lets me look around the old palace one. And then there's the guild ones. They generally let me in if I ask nicely. And there's a dwarf museum off Rhyme Street." "Is there?" said Vimes, interested despite himself. He'd walk along Rhyme Street 1,000 times. "Yes, sir, just up Whirligig Alley." "Fancy that. What's in it?" "Many interesting examples of dwarf bread, sir." Vimes thought about this for a moment. "That's not important right now," he said. "This isn't how you spell gone, anyway." "Yes, it is, sir," said Carrot. "I mean, it's not how gone is normally spelled." He flicked the card back and forth in his fingers. Amanda have to be a fool to break into the Assassin's Guild," he said. "Yes, sir." The anger had burned away the fumes. Once again he felt not the thrill. That wasn't the right word. The sense of something. He still wasn't sure what it was, but it was there, waiting for him. "Samuel Vimes, what's going on?" Lady Ramkin shut the dining room door behind her. "I was watching you," she said. "You were being very rude, Sam." "I was trying not to be." "Lord Eorl is a very old friend." "Is he?" "Well, I've known him a long time. I can't stand the man, actually, but you were making him look foolish." "He was making himself look foolish. I was merely helping." "But I've often heard you being rude about dwarves and trolls." "That's different. I've got a right. That idiot wouldn't know a troll if it walked over him." "Oh, he would know if a troll walked over him," said Carrot helpfully. "Some of them weigh as much as—" "What's so important anyway?" said Lady Ramkin. "We're looking for whoever killed Chubby," said Vimes. Lady Ramkin's expression changed instantly. "That's different, of course," she said. "People like that should be publicly flogged." "Why did I say that?" thought Vimes. "Maybe because it's true. The gone goes missing. Next minute, there's a little dwarf artificer thrown in the river with a nasty draught where his chest should be. They're linked. Now all I have to do is find the links." Carrot, can you come back with me to Hammerhawks? Yes, Captain. Why? I want to see inside that workshop, and this time I've got a dwarf with me. More than that, he added, I've got Corporal Carrot. Everyone likes Corporal Carrot. Vimes listened while the conversation droned on in Dwarfish. Carrot seemed to be winning, but it was a near thing. The clan was giving in, not because of reason or in obedience to the law, but because it was Carrot who was asking. Finally, the corporal looked up. He was sitting on a dwarf stool, so his knees practically framed his head. You have to understand, you see, that a dwarf's workshop is very important. Right, said Vimes. I understand. And, you're a bigger. Sorry? A bigger than a dwarf. The inside of a dwarf's workshop is it's like the inside of his clothes, if you know what I mean. They say you can look if I'm with you, but you mustn't touch anything. They're not very happy about this, Captain. A dwarf, who was possibly Mrs. Hammerhawk, produced a bunch of keys. I've always got on well with dwarves, said Vimes. They're not happy, sir. They don't think do any good. They don't think we'll do any good. We'll do our best. I didn't translate that properly. They don't think we're any good. They don't mean to be offensive, sir. They just don't think we'll be allowed to get anywhere, sir. Ow! Sorry about that, Captain, said Carrot, who was walking like an inverted L. After you. Mind your head on the... Ow! Perhaps it would be best if you sat down and I'll look around. The workshop was long and, of course, low, with another small door at the far end. There was a big workbench under a skylight. On the opposite wall was a forge, and a tool rack, and a hole. A chunk of plaster had fallen away a few feet above the ground, and cracks radiated away from the shattered brickwork underneath. Vimes pinched the bridge of his nose. He hadn't found time to sleep today. That was another thing. He'd have to get used to sleeping when it was dark. He couldn't remember when he'd last slept at night. He sniffed. I can smell fireworks, he said. Could be from the forge, said Carrot. Anyway, trolls and dwarves have been letting fireworks off all over the city, sir. Vimes nodded. All right, he said. So what can we see? Someone thumped the wall pretty hard just here, said Carrot. Could have happened at any time, said Vimes. No, sir, because there's the plaster dust underneath and a dwarf always keeps his workshop clean, sir. Really? There were various weapons, some of them half finished, on racks by the bench. Vimes picked up most of a crossbow. He did good work, he said. Very good at mechanisms. Well known for it, sir, said Carrot, poking around aimlessly on the bench. A very delicate hand. He made musical boxes for a hobby. Could never resist a mechanical challenge. What are we looking for actually, sir? Not sure. Now this is good. It was a war axe, and so heavy that Vimes's arms sagged. Intricate, etched lines covered the blade. It must have represented weeks of work. Not your actual Saturday night special, eh? Oh no, sir, said Carrot. That's a burial weapon. I should think it is. I mean, it's made to be buried with a dwarf. Every dwarf is buried with a weapon, you know, to take with him wherever he's going. But it's fine workmanship, and it's got an edge like... Vimes sucked his finger. Like a razor. Carrot looked shocked. Of course. It'd be no good him facing them with an inferior weapon. What them are you talking about? Anything bad, sir, that he encounters on his journey after death, said Carrot, a shade awkwardly. Vimes hesitated. This was an area in which he did not feel comfortable. It's an ancient tradition, sir, said Carrot. I thought dwarves didn't believe in devils and demons and stuff like that. That's true, sir, but we're not sure if they know. Oh. Vimes laid down the axe, clink, and picked up something else from the work rack. It was a knight in armor, about 9 inches high. There was a key in its back. He turned it, click-a-tick, 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 and then nearly dropped the thing when the figure's legs started to move. Click, 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 click. He put it down, and it began to march stiffly across the floor, waving its sword. Chick-a-chick, 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 chick-a-chick. Moves a bit like Colin, don't it? Said Vimes. Clockwork. It's the coming thing, said Carrot. Mr. Hammerhawk was good at that. Vimes nodded. We're looking for anything that shouldn't be here, he said. Or something that should be and isn't. Is there anything missing? Hard to say, sir. It isn't here. What? Anything that's missing, sir, said Carrot, conscientiously. I mean, said Vimes, patiently, anything not here which you'd expect to find. Well, he had all the usual tools, sir. Nice ones, too. Shame, really. What is? They'll be melted down, of course. Vimes stared at the neat racks of hammers and files. Why, can't some other dwarf use them? What? Use another dwarf's actual tools, sir? Carrot's mouth twisted in distaste, as though someone had suggested he wear Corporal Nobbs's old shorts. Oh, no, sir, that's not right. I mean, they're part of him, sir. I mean, someone else using them after he's used them all these years. I mean, ugh. Really? The clockwork soldier marched under the bench. Click-a-tick, 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 click-a-tick. It'd feel wrong, sir, said Carrot. Yucky. Oh, Vimes stood up. Captain, ow! Mind your head. Sorry. Rubbing his head with one hand, Vimes used the other to examine the hole in the plaster. There's something in here, he said. Pass me one of those chisels. There was silence. A chisel, please. If it makes you feel any better, we are trying to find out who killed Mr. Hammerhawk. All right? Carrot picked one up, but with considerable reluctance. This is Mr. Hammerhawk's chisel, this is, he said reproachfully. Corporal Carrot, will you stop being a dwarf for 2 seconds? You're a god, and give me the damn chisel. It's been a long day. Thank you. Vimes prized at the brickwork. Prize. Use force in order to move apart, or open something. Prize. Vimes prized at the brickwork, and a rough disc of lead dropped into his hand. Slingshot? Said Carrot. No room in here, said Vimes. Anyway, how the hell could it get this far into the wall? He slipped the disc into his pocket. That seems about it then, he said, straightening up. We'd better... Ow! Oh, fish out that clockwork soldier, will you? Better leave the place tidy. Carrot scrambled in the darkness under the bench. There was a rustling noise. There's a piece of paper under here, sir. Carrot emerged, waving a small yellow sheet. Vimes squinted at it. Looks like nonsense to me, he said, eventually. It's not dwarfish, I know that, but these symbols, these things I've seen before. On something like them. He passed the paper back to Carrot. What can you make of it? Carrot frowned. I could make a hat, he said, or a boat, or a sort of chrysanthemum. I mean the symbols, these symbols, just here. Dunno, Captain. They do look familiar, though. Sort of like alchemists writing. Oh, no. Vimes put his hands over his eyes. Not the bloody alchemists. Oh, no. Not that bloody gang of mad firework merchants. I can take the assassins, but not those idiots. No, please. What time is it? Carrot glanced at the hourglass on his belt. About 11:30, Captain. Then I'm off to bed. Those clowns can wait until tomorrow. You can make me a happy man by telling me that this paper belonged to Hammerhawk. Doubt it, sir. Me too. Come on, let's go out through the back door. Carrot squeezed through. Mind your head, sir. Vimes, almost on his knees, stopped and stared at the doorframe. Well, Corporal, he said eventually, we know it wasn't a troll that did it, don't we? 2 reasons. 1, a troll couldn't get through this door. It's dwarf-sized. What's the other reason, sir? Vimes carefully pulled something off a splinter on the low door lintel. The other reason, Carrot, is that trolls don't have hair. The couple of strands that had been caught in the grain of the beam were red and long. Someone had left them there inadvertently. Someone tall. Taller than a dwarf, anyway. Vimes peered at them. They looked more like threads than hair. Fine red threads. Oh well, a clue was a clue. He carefully folded them up in a scrap of paper, borrowed from Carrot's notebook, and handed them to the corporal. Here, keep this safe. They crawled out into the night. There was a narrow plank walkway attached to the walls, and beyond that was the river. Vimes straightened up carefully. I don't like this, Carrot, he said. There's something bad underneath all this. Carrot looked down. I mean, there are hidden things happening, said Vimes patiently. Yes, sir. Let's get back to the yard. They proceeded to the brass bridge, quite slowly, because Carrot cheerfully acknowledged everyone they met. Hard-edged ruffians, whose normal response to a remark from a watchman would be gentilly paraphrased by a string of symbols generally found on the top row of a typewriter's keyboard, would actually smile awkwardly and mumble something harmless in response to his hearty, "Good evening, Masher. Mind how you go." Vimes stopped halfway across the bridge to light a cigar, striking a match on one of the ornamental hippos. Then he looked down into the turbid waters. Carrot. Yes, Captain. Do you think there's such a thing as a criminal mind? Carrot almost audibly tried to work this out. What, you mean like Mr. Cut-me-own-throat Dibbler, sir? He's not a criminal. Have you eaten one of his pies, sir? I mean, yes, but he's just geographically divergent in the financial hemisphere. Sir? I mean, he just disagrees with other people about the position of things, like money. He thinks it should all be in his pocket. No, I meant... Vimes closed his eyes and thought about cigar smoke and flowing drink and laconic voices. There were people who'd steal money from people. Fair enough. That was just theft. But there were people who, with one easy word, would steal the humanity from people. That was something else. The point was, well, he didn't like dwarves and trolls, but he didn't like anyone very much. The point was that he moved in their company every day, and he had a right to dislike them. The point was that no fat idiot had the right to say things like that. He stared at the water One of the piles of bridge was right below him. The Ankh sucked and gurgled around it. Debris, balks of timber, branches, rubbish had piled up in a sort of sordid floating island. There was even fungus growing on it. What he could do with right now was a bottle of bear huggers. The world swam into focus when you looked at it through the bottom of a bottle. Something else swam into focus. Doctrine of signatures, thought Vimes. That's what the herbalists call it. It's like the gods put a use me label on plants. If a plant looks like a part of the body, it's good for ailments peculiar to that part. There's teeth-wort for teeth, spleen-wort for spleens, eye-bright for eyes. There's even a toadstool called phallus impudicus. I don't know what that's for, but Nobby is a big man for mushroom omelettes. Now, either that fungus down there is exactly the medicine for hands, or... Vimes sighed. Carrot, can you go and get a boat hook, please? Carrot followed his gaze. Just to the left of that log, Carrot. Oh, no. I'm afraid so. Hold it out, find out who he was, make out a report for Sergeant Colin. The corpse was a clown. Once Carrot had climbed down the pile and moved the debris aside, he floated face up, a big sad grin painted on his face. He's dead! Catching, isn't it? Vimes looked at the grinning corpse. Don't investigate. Keep out of it. Leave it to the assassins and bloody Quirk. These are your orders. Corporal Carrot. Sir, these are your orders. Well, damn that. What did Veterinary think he was? Some kind of clockwork soldier? We're going to find out what's been going on here. Yes, sir. Whatever else happens, we're going to find out.